Mullah Nasruddin was walking down the street of a foreign country when suddenly he had an identity crisis, or in our modern lingo perhaps we would call it a panic attack, and he dashed into a store nearby and he said to the proprietor, "Did you see me coming in?" The proprietor said, "Yes." Mullah said, "Well, do you know who I am?" The proprietor said, "I've never seen you before in my life." Well, the mullah with a quivering lip said, "Well, how do you know it's me?" There's that story about a young man who'd been seeking liberation for many years, and he'd been the student of a great Hindu teacher, yogi, you might call him. And one day his master called him to him and said, "My son, you've now come to this final stage of initiation, and I can now give you the key to liberation, cessation." Well, the young man stood and said, "Oh, Master, yes, this is something that I've longed for all of my life, but I've got a wife and children, and I've got a mother-in-law, father-in-law, and a mother and father that I take care of, and there's responsibility." "Oh," said the master, "oh, that's fine." He said, but he said, "Here, take this potion home with you, and just before you start your yogic practices, take this potion." So when the man got back to his house, he started to take the positions, the complex yogic positions that he'd honed over the many years of being with his master. And before starting, he had taken the potion that the master had given him. So just when he was in a very complicated gyration of the yoga asanas, he found himself frozen, unable to move. There was a complete cessation of all his physical senses. So after some time, when his wife came to call him for the meal and found him in this position, but totally unresponsive, she panicked and called a physician who pronounced him dead. But he was completely and utterly conscious, although unable to move, with no bodily functions visible or discernible. So the wife began to wail and call the neighbors to her. "My husband has died, what are we going to do?" But of course in Hindu tradition there are certain rituals that have to be undertaken, and one of those is to take the body outside and wash it with milk. But when the neighbors and those around found that the position in which the man was placed rendered him unable to get him out of the door, so they said, "Well, we're going to have to chop off his limbs to get him out." And so the wife and the relatives all stood around, and the wife stopped her wailing, assessed the situation and said, "Well, you know, my husband is dead now, and I can't afford to have my door, well, chopped down. Chop off his limbs." Well, just at this moment, the potion wore off, and the husband was able to recognize exactly where he was in relationship to his family and his neighbors and the rest of the world. And he quietly left them there, went back to his master and said, "Master, please, please, I am ready. Give me the key to liberation and cessation." And finally, there's that much told story about the Pandit Ram Das. He was a great, great scholar, a great Hindu teacher. And we know that one of the basic tenets of Hindu belief is that all of existence takes place in the body of Vishnu. And Ram Das knew the ways of existence. He knew all about astrology, astronomy, mathematics, and the workings of the physical beings. In fact, he loved to explore the body of Vishnu in all its forms, learning insatiably, learning its ways, moving from one place to another in the great body of Vishnu existence. He used to teach his students that they were all integral atoms in the body of Vishnu, and they would cheer and bow to him. But one day a very strange thing happened. He found himself slipping, and suddenly he was outside the mouth of Vishnu in a great, great void, a great darkness. He flailed around desperately, not knowing where he was. All was a void, but he used all the faculties of his extraordinary mind, the mantras, the affirmations, the equations, and finally he was able to bring about a faint outline of Vishnu in the distance. And then, with a supreme effort of mind, he was able to have Vishnu hold out his hand and pop him back into the mouth of existence once again. But Ram Das's life had changed. He could no longer teach that all was existence that took place in the body of Vishnu. And he was unsettled, not happy or content as he was before, in that constant movement of life and learning. There was something else. But after some long while, he managed to absorb himself again in the life within Vishnu. And then it happened again. This time suddenly, without any movement of slipping, there he was, outside Vishnu once again. But this time, no effort of his extraordinary mind could even bring about a faint, misty outline of Vishnu, and the existence that played within. There is a space that we ourselves fill with our own experience that relates that which lies between being ejected out of the mouth of Vishnu and existence, and that moment, as it happened with Ram Das, that we find ourselves back again in Vishnu's mouth, in life, existence, movement. With Ram Das, he found a place beside a still lake and built himself a little hut where he remained. Sometimes the wind came to play on the surface of the lake, just like with his mind. People came, and they too were like the ripples that appeared, the wind that comes, sometimes from the north, the south, the east, and the west. So these three stories bring us again to the question that's asked from time to time in the way of alchemy, the way of spiritual alchemy, recognizing that the spiritual path is one of purification, levels of refinement, and like in the ways of alchemy, after a refining process of burning and the addition of several ingredients, or even one tincture or essence, the elements are put aside to rest, settle into their new structure. And so the justification for this question that's raised from time to time is equated to this alchemical process. And it is, of course, what is our relationship with life now? After each level of refinement, we're different. The way we perceive and experience is different. And it's life that enables us to recognize settling into our new location, as it's called. We ask ourselves the question, what is my relationship with life now? I no longer react in the way that I did before. I no longer perceive in the way that I did before. Where are we now? And how do these stories give us the possibility to make that assessment, to answer this question? What is relationship.